The UFC just signed a $7.7 billion deal that will change the sport forever. Fighters should be celebrating, right? Instead, most of them are quietly getting screwed harder than ever before. On paper, this is the biggest win in UFC history. But in reality, the company just locked in a system where the people risking their lives still make less than the camera crew. And the most shocking part? That might be exactly how the UFC planned it. At first glance, this looks like a massive victory for fighters. The UFC just doubled its media rights money. Paramount Plus is giving fans access to every fight for a fraction of the old price. Dana White is out here promising millions in new bonuses. So why would anyone question it? For years, UFC has built the image of a rising tide lifting all ships. Massive pay-per-view events, Joe Rogan screaming over knockouts, post-fight bonuses handed out like candy. From the outside, it looks like fighters are part of a booming empire. But that's exactly the illusion. It's not that fans are dumb, it's that the UFC is smart. They want you to think fighter pay is fair. They want you to see the bonuses. They want you to believe Dana White when he says, "Everyone's eating," because the truth is ugly. Most fighters aren't millionaires, they're gig workers. And while the company's revenue skyrockets, their contracts stay frozen in time. The UFC didn't make a $7.7 billion deal to pay fighters more. They made it to prove they don't have to. This isn't about helping the sport grow. It's about locking in a system where the company makes billions and the fighters stay stuck. Let's break it down. Under the old ESPN deal, UFC made about $550 million a year. Under Paramount, that number jumps to $1.1 billion. That's double the revenue. But fighter pay? Still sitting at less than 20% of that income. And here's where it gets twisted. The only major variable cost in UFC's business is how much they pay fighters. The arenas, the production, the marketing, it's all fixed. So every extra dollar from this new deal goes straight into Dana White's pocket, unless he chooses otherwise. So when you hear about bonuses going from $50,000 to maybe $75,000, or minimum contracts bumping from $10,000 to $14,000, yeah, it's better. But let's do the math. A $2 million increase in bonuses, a $9 million bump in entry-level contracts. That's $11 million total on a $550 million raise. That's 2%. The rest disappears into a machine that's designed to hoard value at the top. Because the UFC doesn't need to compete for talent. It is the talent pool. And if fighters don't like it, they can get in line or get left behind. Here's where it gets darker. This isn't just about UFC underpaying its fighters. This is about how they've built a legal fortress to make sure they never have to pay them fairly. You see, UFC fighters aren't classified as employees. They're independent contractors, which means no health insurance, no retirement, no legal right to unionize, and no protections under labor law. And UFC likes it that way, because when fighters aren't part of a team, when their careers last just a few years, when speaking out could get them cut, they stay silent, even while the company that owns them is actively trying to change federal law so they never get free. No exaggeration, UFC's parent company, TKO Group, is lobbying for a new bill called the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act. Sounds nice, right? But the goal is terrifying. To gut the original Ali Act, the one law that protects boxers from abusive contracts and shady matchmaking, the new bill would allow a UFC-style company to act as both the promoter and the ranking body. In other words, they'd own the fighter and the belt. And if this passes, then not only is UFC not breaking the rules, they've changed the rules to make their exploitation legal. This isn't just the future of MMA. It's a playbook for monopolizing every combat sport on Earth. Let's do a thought experiment. Imagine you risk permanent brain damage in a UFC fight. You win. Your paycheck? $28,000. Now consider that same fight brought in 500,000 viewers, millions in ad revenue, and you, still responsible for your travel, your corner, your coaches, your healthcare. And if you get injured and pull out, you don't get paid at all. Welcome to the UFC, where getting your face broken is just the cost of being an independent contractor. Even with this new media rights windfall, most fighters will never touch six figures in a year. And here's what's really wild. The UFC could increase fighter pay by 25% overnight and still have fighters' share of revenue drop as profits surge. Think about that. They could literally pay more and still be worse. That's not broken economics. That's rigged economics. Let's go back to the Lee v. Zuffa antitrust case. Court documents revealed that UFC fighters receive around 17% of total revenue. Compare that to NFL players, approximately 50%, NBA players, approximately 50%, WNBA players, approximately 10%, boxers, up to 66%. Why the difference? Because those sports have unions, collective bargaining, competition for talent. UFC has none of that. It's a walled garden. They own 90% of the market and most of the elite fighters. There's no team to trade to, no promoter to negotiate with, and the UFC's contracts reportedly include matching clauses, champion clauses, and coercive renewals, traps that keep fighters locked in for years. It's not just a fight business. It's a monopoly with mouth guards. So, how does UFC keep this all under wraps? Two ways. Bonuses. Dana White makes a big show of giving out $50,000 or $75,000 checks. It looks generous, but in reality, it's spare change. Hype. They drown the financial conversation in trash talk, highlight reels, and baddest man on the planet narratives. It's a performance. Every flying knee and spinning elbow distracts from the fact that most fighters are one injury away from financial ruin. And if one of them speaks up, they get frozen out, cut from the roster, or worse, told they're not hungry enough. Because in the UFC, loyalty is rewarded, dissent is punished, and compliance is profitable. So, here's the truth. The UFC just secured $7.7 billion and used it to double down on a system that underpays its fighters, exploits their careers, and silences their voices. And here's the kicker. They could fix it tomorrow. They just don't have to, because the system isn't broken. It's working exactly the way it was designed to. Fighters fight, fans cheer, the company cashes out, and the only people who lose are the ones inside the cage. So the next time you see a highlight clip go viral, or Dana White hand out another $50,000 bonus, ask yourself, who's really winning here? And how long before the fighters and the fans finally tap out?